piece that's part of a longer work, sort of a collection of short stories, interrelated short stories. And today the title is Past Lives. Borrowed shears in hand, Joanne stares at her reflection in the metal-framed mirror. The cool bathroom tiles ground her. Her roots have grown a half-inch or more, a physical calendar marking the days since she left San Antonio. The bleached strands are no longer that familiar corn silk, the result of dry desert air and motel shampoo. She needs a physical change to match her new name. The name she changed as soon as she arrived at the shelter in Boise. Rita was fading out. Joanne was fading in, overriding her previous self. After a moment, she grabs a handful of blonde hair and snips several inches from her scalp, not worrying about uniformity. Loose hair falls into the sink. The snick of shears is satisfying and definite. When her hair is choppy and short, she sets the shears aside and runs her fingers over her scalp to shake loose the remaining strands. Bits of hair tickle her cheeks and her neck and her nose. From the plastic shopping bag beside her, she retrieves the box of dye, raven black. She smirks as she opens the box and pulls out the cheap plastic gloves in the little mixing tray. The disparity from her days at the salon is comical. She mixes the dye and works it through her hair. As she waits for the dye to set, she stares at her reflection again. And when it is set, she showers and watches the water turn blackish at her feet. Joanne has only been in the shelter for a matter of hours, and she is already feeling new. Her shoulders are light and she shivers with energy. She dresses and walks through town until she finds a small second-hand store run by a church. She walks the men's aisle, choosing several button-down shirts, a few pairs of jeans. In the dressing room, she sheds her clothes and leaves them in a rumpled pile. The unfamiliarity of someone else's clothing itches her skin, makes her feel present and immediate. The woman behind the counter punches numbers into an antiquated register and gives Joanne a strange look. "God bless, dear," the woman says with something edging between sympathy and condescension. Joanne smiles as she takes the change. There's something about this woman's response that satisfies her. No doubt the woman thinks that Joanne is some sort of deviant, unchristian. Joanne emerges into the bright light of the late afternoon, the soft breeze cool on her neck. Back at the shelter, her roommate raises an eyebrow and sets her book aside. "Now that's a dramatic change," the woman says. "Whatever it is, it must be heavy." "Sorry," Joanne asks. "Whatever you're leaving behind." Joanne smiles and sets the bag of new clothes on the narrow bed. "Sorry," the woman says. "I tend to be blunt." "No problem." The woman, Selena, is thin in a ropey, strong way. Her long chestnut hair is braided, and her green eyes sparkle as the women shake hands. There's a transcendent calmness about Selena, a stark contrast to the other women that Joanne has seen in the shelter. Women with ramrod straight posture who watch you from the corner of their eye. Joanne sits on the bed, and the two of them stare awkwardly at each other for a long minute. "No one ever says why they're here," Selena finally says. "They're all trying to forget." "Seems odd to me. If you forget your mistake, aren't you going to repeat it? Isn't that what they say?" Joanne nods. It feels right to agree with Selena, even if Joanne's is not a mistake. She is likely to repeat. Even if she wanted to, she couldn't forget Sam and Alex. They are forever beneath her skin. Selena explains that her problem was that she'd been attracted to bad boys, real bad boys. Tough guys. Bad thing about bad boys is that when they get tough, they sometimes want to get tough with you, Anyways, I left. More to get away from myself than to get rid of them. Only problem is, what is it they say? Wherever you go, there you are. They do say that, Joanne agrees. Joanne falls into the rhythm of the shelter. When she wakes, it takes her a moment to realize where she is. In the last 2 months, she has traveled from San Antonio up the West Coast and left Spokane and hitchhikes to Boise. After a few days, she gets used to waking up in the same place every morning. She's getting used to knowing where she'll be the next day. When the women in the shelter learn Joanne used to be a hairstylist, suddenly every woman in the shelter clamors for a haircut, a change. At night, Joanne lies in her narrow bed and folds her arm behind her head and stares at the popcorn-textured ceiling. Selena sleeps soundly across their small dorm room, her presence palpable. Scattered memories of Sam and Alex flow back to Joanne as she lies there, vulnerable to her own wandering mind. Joanne tries to dismiss the thoughts as soon as they arrive. They are thoughts and memories from a former life, and she wonders now if this is what happens to people who have been reincarnated, the way that thoughts surface unbidden and unfamiliar without grounding or context. Selena works part-time cleaning houses, a job she started after arriving in Boise. It's clearly something she's done before. Her small sedan is packed with cleaning supplies, crammed with buckets and mops and rags, laden down with bottles of different cleaners. Selena returns to the room smelling of bleach, her long braid coming loose, the light smell of sweat on her skin. When she returns from the shower, she sits on the bed, brushing her hair. "So," Selena says, "I could use a little extra help cleaning if you're interested." Joanne has been sitting on the bed, reading a book borrowed from Selena's small library. A confusingly slow story about a beatnik road trip. She sets the book aside now and watches the long, slow brush strokes, listens to the crackling sound of the brush running through Selena's hair. She'll need a better job soon, she realizes, since cutting hair will not sustain her. A real job would require giving her ID or social security number, and she's fairly certain Alex must be looking for. A pang of guilt rises like bile in her throat. "Sure," she says, and Selena smiles and says, "They can start the next day." "You're a lifesaver," Selena says. The houses they clean are cavernous places that echo endlessly. It's as if the people that live in these houses are trying to cement their importance by taking up an ever-increasing amount of space. The first house is large and brick and studded with rectangular windows, a gleaming SUV in the driveway. Selena parks along the curb and they carry in cleaning supplies. The woman that answers the door is maternal and gray-haired with a sugar-sweet voice. Somewhere deep in the house, a TV battles. The woman provides them with a neat list of chores to be done, and it makes Joanne smile, an unbidden memory of her youth. Life before sin, before Alex. They divide the chores. Joanne volunteers for the bathrooms, unsure as to why. She has no interest in what these people may have in their medicine cabinets, no interest in the lotions and creams and salves that line the counter. She's more interested in the actual task of scrubbing at the porcelain bathtub, the mindless physical work ebbing into meditation as she scours the shower tiles and runs an old toothbrush along the grout. When she steps back and looks at the pristine tub, she is satisfied with the transformation, mild as it has been. She catches glimpses of herself in the mirrors and polished surfaces, at first not recognizing herself. The scrubbing and brushing brings sweat prickling to her skin, and she takes off her button-down shirt and folds it and sets it next to the buckets. She catches sight of a tattoo on her shoulder, the scrolling ink of Alex's name and birthday. She winces. When they're done with the first house, Joanne carries the supplies back out to the car and Selena settles the account. They drive to the second, slightly smaller than the first. The woman a similar list of chores. Joanne can hear Selena running a vacuum in the hallway, the rattle of the breeze in the hose. She can hear the vacuum tapping lightly on the walls. Everywhere in this house are framed photographs. Clusters of family members dated by the degrees to which the photos have faded. Some are grainy black and white, a few fuzzy sepia. Here, there's a whole history of people, and Joanne can't help but wonder if the people that live here can name all of the people in the photographs. She wonders who the photographs are for. By the time they finish cleaning the third house, the sun is getting low on the horizon, casting muted shadows along the ridges. The roads are empty. They drive in silence, the windows down, air weaving the smell of cleaning supplies around them. Joanne's arms ache comfortably and she smiles, leaning her head back against the seat. After a few more days of cleaning, Selena suggests that they find an apartment together. They can't stay in the shelter forever, and they're making reasonable money, and they seem to get along reasonably well. This is a quick decision for Joanne. She barely thinks about it and acknowledges it with a casual nod, as if she were agreeing what to eat for dinner. I thought it would be harder to convince you. We both need somewhere to live. I saw a few places the other day. Anyways, I'll give them a call and we can take a look. I'm not particular, Joanne says. Just one request. I can't be on the lease, my ex. Selena nods and looks as though she is going to comment, but remains silent. The apartment itself is a small two-bedroom place in an old brick building with a fire escape zigzagging down the side. In the late afternoon, it is muggy and smells of burnt dust. It takes 2 trips from the sedan to move everything into their new apartment. The first trip up the stairs, they cart their bags, and the second, the cleaning supplies. They set to work wordlessly cleaning the apartment. The emptiness echoes back as the broom scrapes the wall. They are both sweating 2 hours later when they have finally finished bleaching the shower, scrubbing the kitchen counters. Selena lays new shelf paper into the cabinets and drawers. When they're done, they stand in the scoured emptiness of the place. Home sweet home, Selena says. Home sweet empty home. That afternoon, a father and son duo carted a second-hand couch, fabric tattered and frayed at the edges, the fabric something from a 1980s catalog. They heave and grunt as they maneuver the couch through the door and drop it into place in the middle of the room. The father, graying slightly overweight, puffing endlessly. The son, slim, tall, young. Joanne guesses 15 or 16, blonde-haired and shy. She smirks when she catches him staring at her, and he smiles guiltily and looks out the window. Selena pays them cash for the couch and thanks him for bringing it in. "You got more coming?" Dad asks. "Eventually," Joanne says. "This is it for now," Selena says. "Fresh start sort of thing." "About as fresh as it gets," the man says. "Can't imagine anything more." They shake hands and the father-son pair heads out into the early afternoon heat. Joanne and Selena glance at each other and start laughing as they flop down on the couch. They lay there exhausted in their new apartment. That night, they sleep on the couch, their heads on opposite arms. Their legs angled against each other. Selena falls quickly asleep, draped in an old motorcycle jacket, the black leather crackling to well-worn whitening. Joanne lies there in the slowly cooling apartment, studying the geometric patterns the streetlights paint on the ceiling. The warmth of Selena's legs against hers is the first human warmth she's felt in how long. The lingering comfort of it makes her want to curl around Selena. She wants to sink into Selena and disappear, to become a link in the chain of someone else's past lives. Without realizing it, She has slipped into sleep, flickering dreams impossible to track. And when she is awake, she is aware Selena is sitting in the fire escape with a styrofoam cup of coffee and a donut. "I brought you breakfast," she says from her perch. Joanne pulls herself up and peers over the back of the couch. "Coffee on the counter, it's yours," Selena says. "You sleep okay?" Joanne nods and retrieves her coffee from the counter and lets the warmth soak into her hands. "The view is great from here," Selena says. "I mean, it's a brick alley, but it's our brick alley now. And I always wanted a fire escape to sit on." "You're not really a morning person." Joanne shakes her head. Wishes she had a cigarette. She'd always only smoked other people's cigarettes. That way, she could deny that she was actually a smoker. But the thought appeals to her now, the image of a jaded, contemplative soul. She smiles to herself. She's been reading too much Kerouac. Slowly, the apartment fills with things. Selena creates a miniature jungle on the fire escape. A stack of books towers in one corner of the living room. They walk through the second-hand store, selecting mismatched coffee mugs and scratched pots and pans. The focus is only on what they need. "It's like camping," Joanne says, "or living in a trailer. I prefer a boat." "I've always wanted to do that," Selena says. "My uncle's trailer is as close as I got." Joanne notices the woman behind the cash register watching. The same woman that rang her up when she first arrived. The woman has the same confused and condescending look on her face. She idly fingers her necklace, and without having to look, Joanne knows that it's a little silver or gold cross. "She must think that we're lovers," Joanne says. Selena glances over and smiles and puts her arm casually around Joanne's shoulder. It's that distant, familiar warmth again, a softer touch than Sam's, laced with the absence of romantic affection. It's a playful thing, and they look at each other and laugh as Selena drops her arm to the side. "You could do worse," Joanne says. "Could and have," Selena smiles, and for a moment, Joanne feels guilty, but there's no sharpness to the words.